As an athlete who takes it as serious as I do, so focused on doing everything perfect, and you get hard on yourself if you have a little bit of a bad meal, or you hard on yourself if you didn't go hard enough. So I like to pull back, but for the most part, man, I'm 100% go all the time, and I think that's why I've had such longevity in the sport.
All right, guys, Digital Social Hour. We're here with Michael Chandler in Nashville. Thanks for having me, man.
Of course, man. Thank you for coming to the greatest city in the world.
Absolutely.
We were just talking about Nashville off air. This is a good city.
It's in my top 3 now. I'm not even kidding.
It's really, really cool. Great place to raise a family. You know, I've got 2 sons, and the people are just top notch.
Yeah, I know family's super important to you. When you were deciding where to live, was that a big reason why you moved here?
It was. You know, we were living in San Diego, and we knew we were going to move because I started training in Florida, which that I still train with that team and will train with that team for the rest of my career. And you know, we looked at Texas. My wife and I are both from Missouri. Mm-hmm. So Tennessee's got that kind of, it's that Southern hospitality, a little bit of Midwest, a little South. But it's also a really cool city in the sense that there's so many people moving here. There's so much going on. You can have a very, very fun time. You can also just chill and be relaxed. Yeah. Every person we talked to before I moved here was like, this is a great place to raise a family, from the schools to the morals to just the fabric of the ethos of this city. So it's a great place.
I love it, man. I've been keeping up with your workouts of the day.
Yeah,
man, they are intense.
Coming,
man.
Yeah. We go pretty hard.
You go hard. And the fascinating is, because you don't have a fight lined up right now, right?
No.
But you're still training super hard.
Always, man. I think I just look at it like every day that I don't. You know, and obviously there's times where I need to pull back. There's times where I need to take it a little bit easy. Because as an athlete who takes it as serious as I do, it's very easy to turn into a robot, and you become so anal and so focused on doing everything perfect, and you get hard on yourself if you have a little bit of a bad meal, or you hard on yourself if you didn't go hard enough.
Yeah.
So I like to pull back, but for the most part, man, I'm 100% go all the time, and I think that's why I've had such longevity in the sport. My body feels great. I'm 38 years old, so a lot of guys don't make it at a high level where I'm at this long, and I think has a lot to do with coming out of training camp and getting fat and slow and sloppy and getting out of shape and then trying to work back into shape. I just try to stay in shape all the time.
You're like the Braun of the UFC.
Trying to, man. That's what you know, and I've done a lot of research. You know, I'm really trying to maximize my body and get the most I can out of it, because I got this short window of opportunity to compete in the cage for as long as I can, and before you know it, it's going to be over. And I want to be able to answer that question truthfully. Did I do everything I could with the gifts that I was given? Did I give all of myself to it when I take those gloves off for the last time? And I think I'm doing an all right job at it, so I'm going to keep on going.
I love it. No regrets, right?
No regrets, man.
Do you feel like you're still getting better at your age?
I do. And actually, it was very interesting because a little bit of backstory, like over the last year and a half, I've been kind of waiting for this fight with Conor. Yeah. So me and Conor McGregor do the Ultimate Fighter. We're on ESPN for 12 weeks. It's a great opportunity. We signed to fight each other in June, just a couple months ago. He pulls out of the fight. But between that, I kind of pulled myself out of the gym to just heal up a little bit, focus on just fitness and enjoying life and working on things outside of just fighting. So I was out of the gym a lot, out of the mixed martial arts gym a lot for about over a year. And I feel like I started the next training camp almost as a blank slate. I got rid of some bad habits that I had. I had more of a zeal for the love and the passion of a sport that really is a grinding, just a grinder. So you kind of lose a little bit of that passion because you're just constantly grinding. So pulling myself out of it, my last camp I had was the best camp of my life.
Wow.
And the best sparring session I ever had was on Thursday, June 12th or 13th, the day I got the call that Conor pulled out of the fight.
Wow.
So with that, that proof is in the pudding right there. Like, I still feel phenomenal at 38, and
I love it, man.
Win that world title.
Do you think that fight will ever come back to light?
I do. I think it's really just going to depend on timing and making a decision. I think if this fight's gonna drag out any longer, if it's gonna be into 2025, I'm probably gonna pivot and fight someone else, or I'm at least open to it. And if it is, it's gonna be a big fight. It's gonna be a top 5, top 3 guy, number 1 contender. Give me the opportunity to go out there, beat a guy who's in the top of the division, and then go win the title.
Right.
The title, winning the UFC gold, and being the number 1 fighter, consensus ranked the number 1 fighter in the world, has always been the goal. This last year or so, chasing the Conor thing and following the Conor fight was always a nice big. It's the biggest fight you can possibly have, so it makes sense to follow it and exhaust that, ride that horse till you get bucked off, right? But at some point you realize you might have bet on the wrong horse. You know? He's like betting on a 3-legged horse in a race. You know? So it's like
this episode of Digital Social Hour is brought to you by BetterHelp. How do you keep cozy during the holiday season? My favorite way is wrapping up in a blanket and watching Christmas movies with my family and 2 dogs, Milo and Otis. The holidays can be tough on people, and seasonal depression is no joke. Therapy is a great way to bring yourself some comfort that lasts even when the seasons change. It's also a great way to learn more about yourself and understand any big feelings you may experience. You deserve to be the happiest version of yourself, and BetterHelp is here to assist you. BetterHelp's also conveniently all online and ready to work with your schedule. Just complete a brief questionnaire to match you with a licensed therapist today, and enjoy the freedom to switch therapists anytime you'd like in case you don't like the therapist assigned to you for no additional charge. Find peace and comfort this December with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/DSH today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/DSH.
like we'll make our decision, and either way, I believe I win gold by 2025.
Love it, man. Love that mindset. Do you believe it's possible to be a complete fighter, or do you believe every fighter has a weakness?
I think every fighter is going to have weaknesses, and it's a great question, and because people always say, "Hey, how much film do you watch?"
Yeah.
Right? How much you focused on your opponent? How much are you changing your style to the opponent? And I'm not saying my way is the right way, but I've always focused so much more on my strengths, what I'm good at, and I know I've got deficiencies. I know I've got things I can get better at, and I'm constantly working on those things. But overall, I'd rather double down on my strengths than really focus on all my weaknesses. Because a lot of times you focus on your weaknesses, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of the shot you don't want to get hit with, or you lose the way you don't want to lose, or Conor McGregor's got a really great pull-back left hand. Let's focus on not getting hit with that. When really, if I just focus on me, being the best version of myself, I can find myself not falling into that self-fulfilling prophecy of getting hit with the shot I don't want to get hit with. And ultimately, too, you know, we all got different strengths. We all got 2 arms and 2 legs, and we all got certain athletic abilities and gifts, but we're all going to have weaknesses. There's always going to be, and sometimes your weakness is better than some other people's strengths, but they're just not even as close to as good or as effective as your strengths are. So is it really a weakness, or is it just you're not as good at certain things? You know, I'm not going to be great at spinning back kicks or like these certain things that we think we need to do as mixed martial arts. Keep it simple. Keep the main thing, and focus on the strengths.
What an interesting mindset. So just doubling down on your strengths.
I think so. I mean, it's just human nature too, right? You have things you're good at.
Yeah.
You probably enjoy those things. You have things that you suck at, and if you just constantly focused on trying to be better at these things that you suck at instead of hiring somebody to do the thing that you suck at and they enjoy, right? So I look at it like that. If I look at it, my fight performances like I'm trying to run a business, do I want to try to say, hey, there's these 5 things that these guys are better than me at, and I know I can work on them a little bit, but why don't I just focus on the things that I'm really good at? And, you know, I've got a pretty decent record over the last 16 years, won world titles and ranked top 6 in the world. So I must be doing decent enough with my strengths and how I focus on my strengths. So that's what we focused on, and we'll keep getting better in all areas.
Absolutely. How tough was that transition from Bellator to the UFC?
I think it was not hard physically, because I always say, I think the reason I always wanted to go to the UFC was not because for any other reason besides the fact that I trained with guys in the UFC, trained with world champions in the UFC, trained with all these guys, and I saw the way they lived their lives, and I thought, man, I'm living my life more like a champion, training harder, just as disciplined, if not more disciplined, and doing all the right things, right? So I deserve to go out there and be on the biggest platform. So, but mentally, it was a scary, scary thing. You know, I was in Bellator. I had a very, very secure standing in Bellator.
You were champ, right?
Champ and like in the biggest name in Bellator, and I was making good money, and I was at the top of that heap, so to speak. So when you bet on yourself, there's the opportunity cost of, well, if I make this decision, I could give up on this. If I make this decision and that doesn't go well, and I quote unquote made a bad decision, I should have stayed. So I think it was more just a lot of, praying about it and seeking wise counsel and just constantly visualizing it and seeing it until it became clear to me that door just opened. You know, for years when I was going through contract negotiations or getting close to free agency, that door just seemed like it was just a little bit locked. Like I knew the door would open if I wanted to force my way into it, but it was just locked, right? And then all of a sudden it was just wide open. I was like, this has got to be the time to do it. And then I signed with the UFC, Khabib retires his first fight. I fight Dan Hooker, number 5, knock him out, and then get the title shot. And it's just, it all worked out at the right time.
Yeah,
so
the timing was impeccable.
it could be the right decision at the wrong time, right? And it could be the right decision. It's just not ready to be made yet. So it worked out great, and I'm really glad I waited till 2020 to do it.
Yeah, you seized the moment. Because that seems like a very pivotal fight. Like, I know the UFC is pretty cutthroat. If you lose a couple fights, you're out, right?
Yeah, and that was the thing, and that's what I told the UFC in my negotiations. I said, hey, listen, you know who I am. You've seen my fights. I obviously know who you guys are. I want to fight the toughest guys right away. I'm here to prove to myself, more importantly than anybody else, either I am who I say I am or I am not. I believe I can hang with the best guys in the world, so throw me into the shark-infested waters of the UFC. And since I've signed with the UFC, I've had 5 fights. Every single fight has been top 5, top 2, top 3, fights of the night, performances of the night, knockout of the night, debut of the year, fight of the year. It's just fighting the toughest guys, and that's what I asked for, and they've made good on that promise. And I said, I want to be a good thing for your organization. And I also told Dana, I said, hey, I don't think 4 years ago I would have been the man that you need me to be for your organization. I wouldn't have been the champion. I wouldn't have been the mature veteran that you need and you deserve to be fighting in your organization. So here I am, fully matured, blossoming, ready to go take on the greatest challenge of my life. And it's worked out well so far.
I love it. You might be the oldest champ of all time.
Man, that would be great.
I don't know who it is right now, but 38's pushing it. Probably
38's pushing it. I think 40. Who was it? Stipe maybe, or somebody right around there. But man,
okay. Well, heavyweight's not as much competition, so
yeah. And you see those guys fighting longer. I think it's because it takes, I don't want to say less skill, but it's like, when you're a 155 pounder, you got to stay fast. You got to have good cardio. You got to have power. You got to have it all. Whereas the heavyweights, it's like, hey, I got a right hand or a left hook, and I got to just put your lights out because I'm a large human being.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you feel like there was a fight where your opponent brought out the best version of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Justin Gaethje fight, it was fight of the year 2021.
Yeah,
Madison
legendary
Square Garden. Yeah, it was awesome, and obviously I lost that fight, right, on the scorecards, right? I lost the fight, but I use air quotes because did I really lose? In the sport of mixed martial arts, winning is very important. You want to get the nod, you want to get your hand raised, but sometimes you win even though you lost on the scorecards, right? And I think that was one of those fights when it's like I won fans over. People saw who I was. They saw the heart. They saw fighting is so much bigger than punches and kicks and knees and elbows in this competition that we have called fighting in a cage, right? It makes people feel something. They won't remember the exact performance, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Just like they won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel, how they felt while you were around them. So that fight, because it was a scary fight. Justin Gaethje is an absolute warrior.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared of him, so to speak, but it was a scary fight. I'm like, that man right there will die in this cage. I know he is willing to die in this cage. He is that kind of guy. So those are the kind of fights that you get up for and you get excited for, and he brought out the best of me.
Wow, what a scary feeling knowing your opponent's ready to just die.
Oh, 100%. And I think anybody who's a mixed martial arts fan who's watching this was like, yeah, Justin Gaethje's on the Mount Rushmore of, yeah, that guy would die in a cage and would have no second thoughts. And the funny thing about me is, as I sit here today, consciously hanging out with my buddy, I'm not going to die in the cage, right? But when I go inside of the cage and that cage door locks, that guy who fights in there, he is willing to die. And it's crazy how you can, that is me. It's my flesh and blood and it's my heartbeat. But you're in your zone and you're willing to come what may, whatever happens, which is just, and I think that's why people love the sport. If they can't really compare it to any of their life experiences, it's such an interesting perspective. They're like, I like watching this, but I can't really put myself in that place.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's the fight or flight kicking in, right, for you. So it's like a whole nother version of you.
Yeah. And it's funny too. People always say, man, does it hurt? And how much pain have you been in? And I mean, the funny thing is, for me, I'd love to tell all you guys that I'm this big tough guy and I have this huge pain tolerance, but really when you're in there, man, and adrenaline is pumping and you're in the spirit of competition, you don't really feel anything.
Wow.
You feel the impact. You feel your head jar back when someone pops you in the mouth or the nose or the jaw, but you're not really feeling that pain like you would right now if I punched you in the face.
Yeah. Interesting. Which fighter did you feel the most pain with?
So the funny thing is, one of the only times I really felt a lot of pain was I threw a kick on Eddie Alvarez years ago, and I kicked him right in the hip. you know, the punches, not because of the gloves, but just the punches, you don't really feel that much. It's kind of like, especially the really, really good ones, when you land a nice clean shot, people say it's like hitting the sweet spot on the bat. It feels like it didn't even hit the bat, and then it's gone. But I threw a kick on Eddie Alvarez. I kicked him right in the hip, and I bent my toes, like bent my foot in half.
Jeez.
And I like limped around for like 45 seconds, and he beat the crap out of me for like a minute while I was getting my feet back underneath me. That was the most pain I've ever been in an actual fight.
Damn.
Now, training, you're in pain all the time because your senses aren't as, or your fight or flight, your adrenaline isn't as high. You're trying to stay more present so you can stay in the right state of mind to hopefully have that come out on fight night.
Damn, that's cool. Do you agree with Dana White where he says John Jones is the GOAT?
I do. I mean, you know, obviously he had one loss, and it was a DQ with a 12-6 elbow, which they just got rid of. So I think they're going to make that not a no contest, but I think they're going to flip it over.
Oh, wow. So they could flip
they
that
might overturn it. I believe that's what people have said, and I'm just listening to the internet, which is always truthful, right? But I believe that's the case. But man, you look at his body of work, you look at the guys he has fought. He's got to be the GOAT, right? And now he's fighting what a lot of people consider the GOAT at heavyweight, which is Stipe Miocic. So that's happening in Madison Square Garden here in 9-10 weeks, November 16th. It's going to be, and it could be one of his last fights, if not his last fight. It could be John Jones's last fight, could be Stipe's last fight. There's another title fight on the card. It's a huge, huge card, and it's the world's most iconic arena. It's Madison Square Garden. I fought there 3 times. It is the loudest, most hostile place I've ever been in my entire life.
Wow.
It's so loud. I heard my coaches 0 times. I heard 0 instructions coming from my coaches. Maybe that's my fault.
Yeah.
Maybe I was just trying to kill Gaethje and trying to kill Poirier. And yeah, man, that fight is going to be huge. Do you think
in a loud setting like that, you should have some headpiece or something and communicate with your coach?
That would be great. That would actually be really, really cool if you were able to put like a little earpiece in, a hearing aid or whatever, because it is. And I guess obviously both guys are at a disadvantage. If it's loud on one side of the arena, it's loud on the other side. It's just loud in there. But man, that would be cool because it's so hard to hear. You got a guy in front of you who's constantly moving, who's not taking any steps back, and he's looking you in the eyes trying to kill you, and you're always on danger. You're always in a dangerous situation. So having your ears open to try to hear your coaches is no easy task.
That's fascinating. So you're just relying purely on instinct at that point.
Yeah, I mean, when you're not hearing your coaches, you're basically just out there. You're fighting for your life, and there's times where you could probably pause and take a step back. And truthfully, I think that's why people love watching me fight. I don't think there's no foot on the brakes at all. There's not a brake pedal in sight.
Yeah.
It's just all gas all the time, constantly coming forward. I'm not afraid to go out there and die on my shield, right? Live by the sword, die by the sword. Make it exciting, keep you on the edge of your seats. That's why people buy my pay-per-views, and it's a lot of fun, and it's a huge blessing.
Absolutely.
I have great coaches, and they have really great coaching. So I should probably try to listen to them a little bit more.
Who's the GOAT for your weight class, and do you think you could catch him one day?
Oh man, that's so tough, right? Because you got Khabib. Khabib was undefeated. I would say accolades wise, yeah, you got to go with Khabib.
Yep.
But my personal preference, a guy who I have a personal relationship with, is Frankie Edgar. He had losses. He won the title, lost the title. So he doesn't have the accolades and the record of a guy like Khabib. When it comes to like, hey, if I'm voting with my heart, it's Frankie Edgar. Undersized kid he was a wrestler from Toms River, New Jersey. Had some of the best fights I'd ever seen. He was a guy when I got into the sport, I wanted to emulate him and be just like him. I'm like, hey, if you said there's one guy you can fight like, it's Frankie Edgar. So, but when it comes to accolades, you got to look at Khabib. Obviously, his fellow countryman and brother Islam Makhachev, who is our current champion right now, he's got to be right behind him. But if I'm voting with my head, it's Khabib. If I'm voting with my heart, it's Frankie Edgar.
I feel that. Yeah, Islam's undefeated too, right?
He's got one loss.
Oh, he's got one loss.
He's got one loss, but he's now beaten who? Charles Oliveira, Gaethje, Poirier. Man, he's beaten
convincingly too.
Convincingly, like finishing guys, right? So it's everybody. That's the one thing about Khabib never having a loss. It's hard to go through a career and not have a loss. It's hard to go through a career like John Jones and not have losses or multiple losses. It's just. You do all this training and you got this fight for 15 or 25 minutes and you're locked into a cage with another highly skilled, highly motivated, highly talented individual. And the chances of you losing is so high, you know. So to be able to do it undefeated is pretty crazy.
Super impressive.
You know, like even Islam's one loss was I think he got knocked out. Like it was a TKO.
Oh,
you know,
wow.
we're gonna get caught, man. You got a chin and you got a button, and I got a chin and I got a button, and we're throwing punches and kicks and knees and elbows, man. It's just it's only a matter of time before you get caught. You know?
Absolutely. Are there any losses that you still think about?
You know, I don't want to sit here and act like I haven't had my moments where I, had some regrets, or, I mean, I wish I would have done this or fought this way. I'm a guy who's never looked back and said, hey, I want that one back. I want to fight that guy again to right that wrong. You know, I got 3 losses in the UFC. I have no wanting or no desire to fight Poirier, Gaethje, or Oliveira again because I want to right the wrong. I would love to compete against those guys again just because I believe I win a rematch. But, man, I would go back and look at the Poirier fight, my last fight. I think I had a momentary lapse of judgment in that.
You were
third
winning,
round.
right? You were winning that
I was
fight?
winning. I think I was up 2 rounds to none on most people's scorecards.
Wow.
And yeah, that's
So all it takes in fighting is just one little mishap, one mistake.
yeah, and it's interesting too, right? In other sports, there's a few things that could go wrong, but in mixed martial arts, there's so many things that can go wrong at any given moment, and it's a game of millimeters.
Wow.
But I think that's part of it, man. I think you can't accept and love and desire the good things about the sport, the spoils and the platform and what we get to do, without also being grateful for the fact that, hey, man, there's so much danger going on and you could lose at any moment. You can't take the good without also accepting the bad. So I think I've always just enjoyed the fact that, man, I love that I get to go do something that people watch and they're so nervous. They are on the edge of their seat, whether it's because they bet money on me or whether it's because they have a personal relationship with me or they're just a fan. But we all brave the unknown and we're tied onto a tornado. And that's why people love the sport of mixed martial arts. It's so easy to lose. It's so easy to, even if you're 1,001 favorite or 1,001 underdog, anybody can win when that cage door closes.
Absolutely.
You know?
Would you ever do power slap?
I would not. I would not do power slap. Obviously I've been to. Have you been to?
Yeah, I've been.
So,
I got nervous, dude.
Yeah, I mean it's different, right? You're just watching it and you're like, man, this guy is defenseless. You know, it's like even in fighting, it's obviously if I see the punch coming, I can at least duck, dive, dodge, whatever it is, with a dodgeball. But yeah, man, having your hands behind your back and just gritting your teeth and hopefully closing your eyes and taking a slap is a tough.
Hats
tough
off
thing
to those
do.
guys. Yeah,
but it's fun to watch. It's very
is.
fun to watch. If you haven't been to a power slap fight or a power slap match, it's a interesting time.
Absolutely. So I saw on your Wikipedia, this impressed me about you. You were on honor roll every term.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily the smartest guy, but I just knew it wasn't that hard to get. It wasn't hard to get good grades. I mean, I went to public school in High Ridge, Missouri. There was a lot of other kids getting A's and B's. Why couldn't I get A's and B's, right? And then in college, I think it was just. I just thought it was just disrespectful to me being on the team and being a leader on the team to not have good grades and not show up to class. So I'm just a guy who likes to try to do things right.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's different intelligence levels and there's different, some people are good at math, some people are good at arts, some people are good at literature, whatever it is. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses like we talked about earlier. But I just thought, man, I know I can get A's and B's. If I don't, it's just laziness. Right. So I don't want to ever exude laziness in any area of my life.
That interested me because there's a stigma with fighters that they're and boxers that they're not the smartest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you broke that mold.
Yeah, I mean, I think you get what you put into this life in every area, and we can sit back and act, and definitely bad luck befalls us and bad circumstances, or someone can screw you over and someone can take advantage of you. All of those things happen. And a lot of times in life, you can't stop those things from happening. We all are going to fall on bad times. But for the most part, if you do the right thing, if you put a little extra effort in, if you do what you need to do and not what you want to do, you're ultimately going to get good outcomes, So that was the way I saw it. I was like, I have I don't know if I have smarts. I don't know if I have that much intelligence or that much IQ, but I know I can work hard. I know I can do the things that are asked of me and do more than was asked of me. Study a little bit hard and probably get pretty good grades.
If your 2 kids went up to you and said they wanted to become fighters, what would your reaction be?
It's a good question. I would definitely support it. I'm definitely not pushing him into it. I'm looked at I'm around little league guys all the time, right? We're on football teams, we're on baseball teams, we're on basketball teams, we're on soccer teams, and I'm around the dads all the time. I'm like, hey man, so your kid doing jujitsu? Is he doing, and I own a gym here in town called Nashville MMA. So we have the mat space, we got the coaches, we got great programs. But for me, knowing that the sport of wrestling was too hard for me when I was that age, and I'm not condoning, or I'm not saying that anybody who is starting their kid wrestling at 5 is a bad thing, but I just know it was tough for me. So I would love for my kids to play all the team sports, learn how to move their body, learn how to play sports, learn how to get more athletic as they're growing and maturing. But it's definitely going to be something that I want to get my sons into if they want to, if they desire, and maybe they don't. It's hard being a coach's kid, right?
Right.
It's hard being it's tough. You watch kids on these teams and like their dad's the coach. That kid, whether it's they hold themselves to too much of a higher standard, or they got too much pressure on them, or maybe the dad in their relationship is a little bit, there's pressure added to it because he's coaching other kids, but also he's their kid. You see it. I'm on YouTube and I'm fighting I'm fighting on pay-per-view, and like everybody knows who I am because of hand-to-hand combat. So I don't want my sons to feel the first time my kids step on the mat, they're going to be looked at differently than everyone else.
True.
Oh, that's Michael Chandler's kid.
The expectations, right?
Right. And so if all of a sudden they come to me and say, hey, my buddy George or my buddy Rhett, hey, they want to start BJJ. Can I do it? Absolutely, bud. Let's do it. But I'm not going to be like, hey, dude, let's start learning BJJ now.
Right. So you didn't like wrestling when you were super young?
Well, I started when I was 5 and I quit by the time I was 8.
Whoa.
It was too hard. It was, me out there in this little singlet wearing a headgear. It's too much for me. It was too much pressure for a little kid who's supposed to be enjoying sports. To me, I just want my sons to enjoy sports, whether it's sticks, whether it's balls, whether it's, soccer, basketball, football. Like you win as a team, you lose it as a team. It's not all on you. And my son is hard on himself. He lost his baseball game last night, and he's like, we're the worst team ever, and I struck out, and I'm the worst. And it's like, I love that he cares, but also he can't take the full responsibility for that because there was a bunch of errors, and that the other team was good, and it wasn't just him losing. So I lost to a girl when I was like 7 or 8 years old, and that's when I was like, dude, that's tough for a little kid, dude. It's tough for a little boy. Just lost to a girl, man. How do you hold your head up high and go into school the next day after you lose to a girl, right? Nothing against girls, but it's tough, right, for a young kid like that. So I started back up as a freshman, and I've been in love with hand-to-hand combat ever since. I dedicated my life to it at 14 years old under Ron and Bob Wilhelm at Northwest High School, and then I wrestled in college, and then now I've been fighting for 16 years.
Love it, man. How tough are these women in the UFC? Could they take on just a regular dude?
Yeah, I think
they would destroy them.
I think they obviously depending on size. Like I think one of my favorite female fighters right now is Wei Lee, the 125 champion, but she weighs 130 pounds. She's tiny. She's like 5'1". So size makes a big difference, obviously. But man, you look at some of these girls like pound for pound, like same size. They got skills. They're tough. They've been hit before. A lot of people are tough guys, but have never been hit. They don't know how they realize that they would either tuck their tail between their legs or it would turn into a fight or flight situation.
Right.
So yeah, they're tough.
Were you scrappy at a young age? Were you getting in a lot of fights?
I wasn't. So that's a very interesting fact about me. And everybody's got their different road, like why they fight. Right.
Yeah.
I had never been in a street fight.
Oh, wow.
A lot of fights in the wrestling room, whether it be, hey, I'm clubbing you and I'm not really actually punching you, but like this is escalating and coach breaks us up.
Yeah.
Or actually got into a couple kind of fights on the mats in college wrestling. But no, man, I was always too afraid to get in trouble. I really was. Ever since a young age, I was like, man, fighting would be really cool, but I'd rather just tuck my tail between my legs and diffuse the situation because I don't want to get written up, get in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension, be known as that guy. And now I get paid for it. So
that's crazy.
Nice. Yeah.
Were your parents super strict?
They were good. They were tough love. We didn't have a ton of structure in the house. I mean, my mom and dad worked 2 and 3 jobs. My dad was a union carpenter, and he would do side jobs on the weekends. My mom would be up early. My dad would be up early, go to work. My mom would be up early, get the boys to school. Then she would work all day till 5, and then work at my grandpa's restaurant from like 6 to midnight.
Damn.
So it was like they were constantly working. So it wasn't because we didn't have a lot of structure, not because they didn't want to give us structure. They were just constantly grinding to keep food on the table.
Wow.
So me and my brothers got to do whatever we wanted a lot of times, man. But you're young kids. You're not really going to get in that much trouble. We ran around in the woods, fell out of trees, built things, blew things up, killed animals, went hunting. I guess that's what we did.
Do you think a big part of the reason you wanted to be successful was seeing the way your mothers were or your parents were kind of struggling?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I wanted to transcend that. But everybody always talks about how hard I work and the discipline I have and the faith in myself and the faith in the process and all these things. But I was just a byproduct of Mike and Betty Chandler, man. They worked so hard and they never complained. They never made excuses. They never talked about their deficiencies. They just like, yeah, we might complain a little bit about how tough things were, but they just kept on going.
Wow.
Every single day, my dad woke up at 5 a.m. Every single day, my mom was up getting the boys ready, getting us ready for school, making sure we had breakfast, making sure we were going to be on the bus on time. And man, I always feel like I'm nothing compared to them when it comes to work ethic, when it comes to discipline, when it comes to what they tried to create inside of me. And they did a dang good job raising me and my two brothers. And I think I'm just a byproduct of that.
That's how I feel with my parents, man. It's all perspective too. Because as a kid, I used to complain a lot and have victim mentality.
Yeah.
And then I see what my dad goes through. He's 6'5", 97 pounds, super underfed on a farm, working 12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Mom came here from China with $20 in her pocket, didn't speak English.
Goodness.
And I'm complaining about living in a middle class family.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. And you also get that perspective too, where obviously we have our gripes about our parents. Dad was not a good dad because of this, this, and this. And mom wasn't a good mom because of this, this, and this. And they taught us this and they should have taught us this. And you kind of go through that where for me, it was when I went to college and I started seeing all these other people from all walks of life, and you get opened up to all these different things. You're like, oh man, I wish I was raised like that, or I wish my dad was more like that, or mom was more like that.
Yeah.
But then a couple of years later, you have your own kids and then you realize, dude, I am failing every single day, right? Being a dad and my wife being a mom, it's the hardest thing you'll ever have to do. And I have to have a career and provide for the family. And I have all the normal things that we all have to go through, right? It's like, as a kid, you're just naive. You don't know what you don't know. Right. And then you get a little bit older, you're like, man, I had awesome parents. They were so good. And yeah, they weren't perfect, but I know I'm not perfect. So if I'm judging them by perfection, it's a unwinnable battle. Right?
Unwinnable. You can't compare people to perfection.
No, man. And also just for me, just realizing that I am just a work in progress, trying to be better every day. As long as I care about my children and I love them and I'm trying my best, that's the best you can do. Yeah. Because I've laid my head on the pillow at night and just shamed myself for the thing I said or the thing I didn't do or the thing that I missed or, and that's a tough battle too, because as long as you give them safety, security, and they know that you love them and they know you're trying the best and you're able to admit, as men, a lot of times we have trouble admitting that when we're wrong or saying sorry to our children. I mean, just the other day, all the time I'm telling my son, hey, just so you know, like, I think I made a mistake here and I'm just trying to figure this thing out too.
Wow. You said that to your 5-year-old son?
Yeah. Well, my 7-year-old.
Oh, 7-year-old.
Because I think I want him to have that perspective that, hey, just because he's an authority figure and just because he's my dad and just because he's Superman doesn't mean that he knows exactly how to do it. It's like, hey, buddy, I wish I had a playbook that I could go to and say, okay, well, this is the scenario. Let me figure exactly out how to figure this out. We just fail all the time.
I love that because as kids, you see your parents as like such a high level and they're always right.
Yep.
But it shouldn't be like that, right?
No, definitely not. And I think it takes the pressure off of us as parents, and it also takes the pressure off the children. And yeah, they could maybe use it against us. I guess the fear would be like, well, he's going to use it against us and he's going to look at me less. Your kids are never going to look at you less. Ever, ever, ever. When we were kids playing cowboys and Indians and G.I. Joes and superheroes and Power Rangers and all this stuff, all we wanted to do was be a superhero. All I wanted to do was be the coolest dude, the hero of the story. And I am that to Hap Chandler and Ace Chandler, And I think by admitting to them that I'm just trying to figure this thing out and I am going to make mistakes and I'm going to do things that I wish I wouldn't have done or not do things that I wish I would have done. I think it unlocks something. It unlocks a love and a trust that is teaching them subconsciously what a man is. And like I said, I don't know if I'm doing it right, but I'm trying my best.
That's life, man.
Yeah.
Do you let them come to the fights or are you kind of worried about them seeing it?
So my son Hap has been to a fight. He was actually at the fight. I knocked out Tony Ferguson.
Oh, nice.
He came into the cage with me, so that was awesome. My last fight they did not go to. This fight they were going to go to. I was going to have Hap there for sure to fight Connor, but obviously that fell through. But I think Hap will come to the next one. I think Ace might even come to the city that it's at. I just don't know if we're going to actually bring him to the fight, mainly because it's going to be midnight. So it'll be late.
That's late for them.
Yeah.
How's your mental health been throughout this journey, this 16-year fight career?
It's been good. I think I took some losses that I needed to take to really take ownership of my mind.
Wow.
I think, I vastly underperformed in wrestling. I self-sabotaged myself. I didn't believe in myself enough. I had a small view of myself, and it held me back. So whenever I took those singlet straps off for the last time, I vowed to myself, hey, when I get into the sport of mixed martial arts, I'm not going to self-sabotage anymore. I'm going to move forward like a champion. And I did that. I did that for 9, 10, actually it was 12 fights. I was 12-0. I was working on everything physically, but I wasn't really working on my mindset. I lost that first fight. I lost my first fight to Eddie Alvarez, and then I lost 3 fights in a row.
Whoa.
I went 688 days without winning a fight because I was not prepared to lose. I don't think we should focus on losing. I don't think we should really acknowledge the fact. You should acknowledge the fact that losses are going to happen in life, but don't focus on them so much that they become self-fulfilling prophecies. But you must be prepared to lose if it does come. And I was not ready. I lost that first fight. I immediately forgot how good I was. I immediately started blaming other people. I immediately started put myself in this jail cell of self-pity and started just looking at the world differently and starting to believe, all the naysayers. And I hid. I hid from everybody. The fight was up for fight of the year. I didn't want to go accept the award. I didn't want to do any interviews. I didn't want to go out there. And that was when I really started this mental health journey of realizing that you are what you are and where you are because of what has gone inside of your ears, or in between your ears. And I can do all the push-ups and do all the reps and do all the sparring things, but all I'm doing is building up a bigger, faster, stronger, subpar version of the man that I was created to be if I'm not truly believing it in my mind. So I've kind of fixed all that, and I've been on a constant quest of mindset training every single day since then. And I believe that this sport, it's physical, and you see it all play out inside the cage, but it's really what the fighter is thinking and the view that he has of himself that carries him into getting his hand raised or losing, because a man or a woman can't consistently perform in a manner that is inconsistent with the way that they see themselves. So if you don't see yourself as a champion, you're probably not going to get there. Or maybe you do get there once and then very quickly fall because you didn't truly believe it. So.
Right. That's so interesting, man, because you see fighters when they lose once and they never look the same after.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, I did that. The biggest thing for me was the embarrassment and the hiding, right? I make it a point every single time. So there's some good friends of mine, Taylor Lawan and Will Compton. They have Bussin' with the Boys here in Nashville. Monday after my fights, no matter what, that's probably where I'm going, because whether I win or I lose, I'm showing up on that bus, because we can either celebrate the win or I can sit there with blood coming down my face and a black eye and my nose is all stuffed up from getting punched in it and traveling, and I can sit there and we can talk about the loss. And it's for it's to show people how to overcome loss, and it's to be on a cool platform, and it's to go out there and do something that a lot of people don't do, but it's very selfish too. It's me unlocking and taking away the power of that loss, because you go home and you lock yourself in your house and you don't take the phone calls and you don't hang out with friends and you just sit there in that jail cell of self-pity. It's only going to just continue to deteriorate you as a human being. So I go out there right away and I wear it on my sleeve and say, this is what happened and this is how it went. And this is what I'm feeling. I cried. I'm in pain. This is, and just talk about it. Because when you acknowledge it, it takes away all the power.
Wow.
And that's I've made that a tradition every single fight. Whether
you own it.
Bussin' with the Boys or it's something else, I'm doing interviews and it's really selfish. It's for me to go and unlock and take the power away from that loss so I can just move past it.
Yeah, you own it. And these days it's even tougher for athletes because of social media. So you're seeing clips of yourself getting knocked out on Twitter when you log in.
Gosh, man. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the social media is the tough thing to get on, because it's just your fight's constantly being talked about. And that's one of those beautiful / painful things about the sport, right? You go out there and you get the win, or my fight with Tony Ferguson, man, that kick.
Yeah.
It made SportsCenter top 10, and it was like it was all over the world. It went absolutely viral. So it's very easy for me to sit there and be like, oh my gosh, and oh my
stroke
gosh,
your ego a little bit.
Oh, the Rock posted a video like this guy and that. Oh my gosh, Mark Wahlberg said that, and you're like, oh man, this is awesome. But on the flip side of that coin, you can't enjoy all of that without also realizing that, man, people are going to talk about your loss too.
Right.
And every single time you see it, it's going to be painful. But it's also just, if you're going to fail while daring greatly. And I would much rather be the man in the arena, taking chances, throwing myself into the fire, putting myself out there, than living a life of mediocrity, of chosen mediocrity. We can all choose whether we want to just do nothing and not pour into our gifts and not take chances. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just, you also can't expect your soul to continue to blossom into the man or woman you're supposed to be.
I want to end off with Gary Brecka and 10X Health.
Yes.
How much that has impacted your life.
It is awesome, man. This last camp, as I said, was the best camp of my life. And I think it had a lot to do with me doing the superhuman protocol the entire time. I took my genetic test. Every single day, it was another thing that I could check off, like check the box off the list of, I did something extra today that I know not a lot of guys are doing, if any of them are doing. So I would do the 10X Pro Plunge, cold plunge, hop on the EWAT, the bike, do 15 minutes on the PIMF mat and the red light bed. Man, just obviously I train hard. We've talked about this. I do the right things. I eat correctly. I live a champion lifestyle, but a lot of guys do that. Right. My next opponent, whoever it is, he's doing that. It's about getting that 1% little extra edge, right? And adding the oxygen and the red light and the PIMF. I mean, it's taken my game to a whole nother level. The mental clarity that I have, the energy that I have, then the recovery. At 38 years old, man, I was just with a couple fighters who I won't name, but like they're my age. And they're like, dude, so you're telling me right now, like you can get down on your knees and you can wrestle without knee pads and you can do this and you can. I'm like, yeah, you can't. He's like, dude, no, I do a wrestling practice and I can't walk for like a week. And I'm like, oh man, that's tough.
Damn.
You know, and some of it is, you know, the wear and tear of our bodies and the profession that we chose. But a lot of it has to do with the fact that I believe I've got these 2 arms and these 2 legs and this body to be able to squeeze every ounce of talent out of it while I can. And 10X has been a huge cornerstone.
Love it, man. You'll be fighting in your 40s, I think.
I could if I wanted to. It's debatable whether I would want to. I mean, at some point you got to realize that because the checks are going to keep getting bigger and the lights are going to keep getting brighter. But at some point, the most important thing that I will ever be in my entire life is dad and husband. And fighting in a cage is really, really cool. And Madison Square Garden, pay-per-view and all these things. But man, being able to play baseball in the front yard with my son is even more important.
Wow.
So I think I could fight it in my 40s, well into my 40s, but I'll hang it up before then.
So you're thinking about retirement?
I mean, I'm definitely not thinking about retirement at this juncture right now. I think I've got 5 hard, good, awesome, massive fights.
Okay.
For sure. But you know, you talk about fighting well into your 40s, you're talking about like 10 more fights.
That's true.
I don't think I have that many.
I feel that, man. I love the honesty. Michael,
yes,
closing messages, anything you want to close off with here?
No, man. Thank you for the opportunity and the platform. And I just believe we were created for so much more than we could think or imagine. And I'm living proof of that. I was a small guy from a small town who was taught to do small things. And somehow I ended up on this huge platform and this huge stage and this huge life that I'm living. And it's just a testament to if you keep on going, you do the right thing and you operate with integrity, anything is possible. So you guys keep doing that.
You just inspired millions of people. Thanks for coming on, man.
Of course. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.